Deputy Judge President Isaac Madondo is this morning expected to be interviewed for the position of Judge President of the KZN Division of the High Court. And he's among the last group of candidates to be interviewed by the Judicial Service Commission in Sandton today. Let's cross now to specialist reporter Hasina Gori, who's been following these developments all week long. And what a week it has been. Hasina, good morning. So we started on Monday. We saw the prospective candidates for those two vacancies at the Constitutional Court, and now today to end it all. So just give us an overview of what's happened.
Good morning. Yes, as you mentioned, quite a busy week here at the Judicial Services Commission interview panel. It started first with that very special closed session on the rules as well as criteria looked for all the interview candidates as they went into day two, which saw the Concourt nominees then being shortlisted and interviewed. Yesterday was quite an interesting day. It was one of the days where they were interviewing positions for the provincial high courts, and one of the candidate, Vusumuzi Nkosi, was dismissed and his interview cut short for misleading the commission. I want to bring in with me Judges Matter Zikona. Thank you so much this morning for joining us. Let's start with yesterday, what we saw taking place. I want to understand from you, what is the process when it comes to one making that shortlist and coming to these interviews? What kind of criteria are looked at, and how do you get to this point of being in this room?
Good morning. So before a candidate appears before the JSC, they have to be nominated. And then once they're nominated, there's the sifting committee which conducts the shortlisting of candidates. And once they're shortlisted, they're interviewed by the JSC. The JSC makes the recommendation to the president whether to appoint a candidate for permanent appointment, and the president makes the final selection or appointment of a candidate. So yesterday we saw Mr. Vusumuzi Nkosi being interviewed by the JSC. He was the second last candidate to be interviewed. And his interview did raise a lot of concerns for us as Judges Matter as well, because our question is, how did he make the shortlist? What did the JSC consider in order for him to be shortlisted and interviewed yesterday? And we did see him last year being interviewed by the JSC, and there were various concerns that were raised by the Judge President of the Labour Court last year relating to the judgments that he has reserved and part-heard matters, but he disputed those concerns that were raised by the Judge President then, as we saw yesterday, him doing that again. So the problem that we have is the shortlisting, and the main question that we have is, how did he get shortlisted again by the JSC? What did the JSC consider when it shortlisted him? And again, what is going to happen going forward with regards to him? Because he's an attorney, so he's regulated by the LPC, the Legal Practice Council. Is there any action going to be taken? Is the JSC going to do anything about his conduct or his failure to deliver judgments on time, having reserved judgments, etc.? And it was quite surprising to see that he has a qualification from an accredited institution in America. And as the Chief Justice mentioned yesterday, he didn't seem so concerned or surprised when this issue was raised with him. So that's also concerning. But the main problem, or the main question that we have, how did he get shortlisted?
Talking about shortlisted, today we are going into the interviews for the Judge President of the KZN Division, and one of the nominees also has, not, I won't say a red flag, but some concerns as well. Let's talk through that specific interview process today.
So today we've got two sets of interviews that are taking place. It's for KZN, and one is for the Judge President position, and then the other is for, ordinary judge position. And we've got around 6 candidates for that. So the JSC is going to first interview Judge Madondo. He's already a sitting judge, so he's going to be interviewed for the JP position. So we're going to have to see what comes out of that interview and evaluate it. That the Judge Madondo has been sitting, and he has written quite extensively, and we'll have to see what comes out of his interview. It might be quite interesting, but we have to wait and see.
And we know one of the cause for concerns going into today's process was the conduct of commissioners, and we know that they had that special sitting talking around criteria. Have we seen any difference in this round of interviews, comparing it to the Chief Justice interview process as well as last year? But also going forward, we know they've said they have now sent this matter to their own rules and regulations body and will be creating maybe more options. What would Judges Matter like to see them consider when they go into that process?
Well, as you did say at the beginning of this interview, the JSC did sit on Monday, and it looked at its mandate, and it also looked at the criteria that it has to apply when interviewing candidates. And it decided to confirm the Mohammed guidelines that were adopted in 2010, which looks at Section 174 of the Constitution, whether a candidate is appropriately qualified, fit and proper, the transformation agenda, and it also considered other factors, integrity of the candidate, whether the message that will be sent to the general public if a candidate is appointed. So that's one of the few factors that the JSC considers. And what we've seen in these interviews, which is something that we are happy with, is the Chief Justice Zondo. His chairing skills we saw last year in October. He is a good chairperson, and we've seen that play out this week as well. Because if you look at the time that candidates are being interviewed for, it's almost consistent, so that's okay. And at the beginning of each interview, he sets out the criteria that the commissioners have to consider when asking candidates questions. So that's something that we are happy with. Obviously, this is not the end of what has to be done by the JSC. The Rules Committee has to look into the criteria further, but the JSC has done something about the issue of criteria. Obviously, we still need to have rules in respect of JSC commissioners, how they conduct themselves during interviews, but we're getting there.
Thank you so much. That was Judges Matters Zikona speaking to us here on the last day of the interview process. We've seen interview of candidates for both the Constitutional Court, the Higher Court, as well as the various different provincial high courts in the country. It is expected to start at 9 o'clock this morning, and as always, you can follow it on all our SABC online and digital platforms, as well as TV and radio platforms.